Right, a tough night for Celtic in midweek. It's never nice to see us completely outclassed in Europe, but there is no time, quite literally, to feel sorry for ourselves. We've got the perfect chance to get back on it tomorrow against Hibs. I was obviously really disappointed to go out to Bodo Glimt. You know, me more than anyone was, really valuing this Conference League tournament. I felt it was a trophy that, as daft as this sounds, Celtic could actually target winning or certainly going quite far in the competition. Obviously, that didn't play out. I think any time Celtic play a match, apart from the real top teams in Europe, we should be targeting a victory. And every competition Celtic go into, I think we should be looking to go as far as we can in the competition. I do think that as much as the league is the most important thing this season, it's not the only important thing, and I do find nights like Thursday night really tricky, being completely outclassed. However, having said all that and having had, nearly 2 days, day and a half to kind of come to terms with it, I do feel that, as frustrating as it is, we maybe just need to park the idea of success in Europe and even just European football completely for now. Now, I know quite literally Celtic have to do that because we won't have another European fixture this season. But I mean, as a fan base, I think we all just need to not forget how disappointing it was and certainly learn from it, but just really get behind the team now and try and win the league, because we are just 10 more wins away from winning the league title. I know the stat about not winning a knockout match post-Christmas since 2004 is one many people have been using, and it's a fair criticism of the overall club. I don't feel it's much of a fair criticism of this current group of players. I mean, Matt O'Reilly, for example, was 3 years old when Celtic last won a knockout tie post-Christmas against Barcelona. So I think we just need to remember that the majority of these players, yes, it was disappointing against Bodo Glimt, but I think overall in Europe this season, you can't say it was a complete disaster. I mean, we took 9 points from our Europa League group. Even qualifying for the Europa League group stage, given the state we were in the summer, was a pretty good achievement. So I think we need to have a balanced view on it. I think just move on from our frustrations at this stage. As Asim said on Thursday night after the game, if we're still getting these results in a year's time, in Postecoglou and the player's second full season at the club, I think then there's more valid form for criticism. But I just think for now, let's focus all our efforts on winning the league. We can tackle Europe next season. Celtic teams in the past have had really poor European campaigns under new managers and have then gone on to much better things the following year. Football changes really quickly. Gordon Strachan's the obvious one. First season, put out of the Champions League qualifying by Artmedia Bratislava, a much worse result in Celtic's history than Bodo Glimt was. And then the following year, we're qualifying for the last 16 of the Champions League, beating Man United. Things change quickly. And the final thing I'd just say before I shut up and you can all enjoy the rest of your lives, Celtic's next European match, if we win the league, will be in the Champions League group stage. And that will feel a hell of a long way away from what we witnessed on Thursday night. So things turn quickly. Let's just focus on the league now. And, stop it. Don't give me applause. Come on, stop it. So we go again tomorrow against Hibernian. It's always a fixture I look forward to, especially Easter Road at any point in the season. But I think even more so when you're chasing a title. I don't know about you, but I'm almost on the ticking off mode in the season. I think we've reached that point. One game at a time. That is the big phrase I'm going to introduce. I don't know if anyone's ever used it in football before, but I'm going to bring that phrase in. One game at a time from now on the channel. We just look at the next game, we tick it off, and hopefully we move on. And if we do that, we'll be champions. It really is simple. It's really not going to be simple, is it? Before we chat about the game, let's get the scoop on the Hibs by speaking to their fan and the Down the Slope Hibs podcast contributor, Liam. Now, Liam spoke to us away back in December, just prior to the Cup final, and I wanted to get him back on the channel to see how things had changed from a Hibs point of view. He started by telling me where Hibs find themselves right now.
It's a team that's finding its way, I think, is fair to say. Sean Maloney looked to, bringing a few new players probably had more change in January than you would like, to be honest. The January transfer window should really be building on what you've got, but we've had quite a number of players who've come in and been almost immediate starters because the squad was really needing an overhaul, if I'm being honest. So it's probably too early to say, but it's clear that there's a style of football he wants us to play. Whether he's got the players to do that or not is to be determined.
Yeah, one big player you did lose in January was Martin Boyle. How have Hibs reacted to losing him?
He's been a talisman for us for the last 2 or 3 years, so it was always going to be extremely difficult to replace him. We've signed a wide player, but a very different wide player in Sylvester Jasper on loan from Fulham with an option to buy. Very different style of footballer. But yeah, naturally we're losing a great deal of pace. We're losing that directness, and we're losing goal contributions as well. Martin Boyle last season, I think, chipped in with 15 or 16 goals over the course of last season, which for a wide player in the Scottish game is absolutely huge. So yeah, we're missing him.
And who have the big players been under Maloney so far? Who's really stood up in matches?
So Chris Cadden's probably going to be a candidate, if not a lock, for player of the season, playing right wing back most of the season. Has on occasion played further forward. Incredible engine, gets up and down the park very well, combative, gets a lot of balls into the box. Sadly, the last few weeks we've probably not had many players in there to meet those balls into the box, which has been unfortunate. And Lewis Stevenson's having a bit of a renaissance season at the age of 34. He's played in centre midfield a couple of times recently and looked very, very good there. There'll be a lot of raised eyebrows from those who don't kind of follow Hibs at that kind of comment. But I think Lewis Stevenson, for me, he has his limitations. He's 34 years old, but actually, as a footballer, you know what you're going to get from him. And in a game against Celtic, where we're likely to be without the ball for quite long spells, I think he's the right kind of player to stick in the midfield.
And from a kind of attacking point of view, obviously Cadden can attack, but if you're looking at real attackers, Kevin Nisbet, I mean, what's going on there? He seems to have had a bit of a troubling year.
He's had a difficult year. Some of you might not know that he lost his father just a little bit over a year ago, and I think, to be honest, since then his form has kind of been on a slight decline. But under Maloney, I've noticed that his work rate has just absolutely shot through the roof. So whilst he's not maybe contributing as much in the final third as he was during his first season, he's playing this kind of false nine position where he's dropping back in, he's helping the midfield, he's doing all the hard yards, but maybe not necessarily getting the goals as a reward, which is difficult. In terms of the other attacking players, I mean, Jake Doyle-Hayes, a deep lying playmaker, did score 2 goals at the weekend, the second of which was an absolute perler. But he is certainly not an attacking footballer. Ewan Henderson won't be available for this game, clearly, because he's on loan for the end of the season. But Ewan Henderson, the last couple of games, there's been real signs that there's definitely a player there. Similar in a lot of ways to his brother in terms of some of his characteristics, but probably more influential in the final third.
Yeah, we've played quite a lot this season, haven't we? This is the 4th meeting. I think certainly the last 2 have been, pretty recently. They've both been mid to late December and mid to late January. So it's the 3rd time in 3 months. Feels like a lot's happened even since the last one at Celtic Park. What did you make of that last game, and what do you think Hibs can do better on Sunday?
It was a really poor performance the last time out. It was one of those games where we just, similar to the game at Easter Road in some respects at the beginning of the season, where we conceded a goal early and we just looked completely devoid of confidence and looked like all structure and game plan kind of went out the window. What I would say is I think we have to learn from that, and that we cannot afford to go 1-0 down after 10 or 15 minutes, because we've seen what you guys are like when you get the kind of wind behind you. At the first 45 minutes at Celtic Park in January, it just felt like a complete constant onslaught, other than the missed chance that Nisbet had kind of at the back post. So we need to, I think, just do that classic cliche of keeping it tight for the first period of time and just weathering any potential storm, but keep ourselves in the game as well. We do have some weapons in our team, but I think typically we found against Celtic out of possession really, really difficult. I think, though, if we're able to keep the ball for sustained periods of time and actually get into the final third, I think we've seen in recent times there are some frailties in that team, that Celtic team, from a defensive point of view.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, by the way. I'm not as much as all the viewers want me to. Probably, I'm not going to disagree too much with that. I think that's a fair point, and you only have to look at the the game plan of Bodø Glimt, and you've signed a couple of their players, so they'll probably have watched the game as well. So they'll be well aware of what you have to do to have success against us. You do have quite a good record against us at Easter Road, not earlier this season, but in years gone by. The games, I mean, from a Celtic fan's point of view, they're games I always look forward to, probably more than most, because they're just so good, especially Easter Road. They're end to end. They're very rarely quiet matches. Do you think it's going to be the same kind of match on Sunday?
Probably not. I mean, if I think back to like the likes of the Neil Lennon era, and I think I'm right in saying I'm allowed to mention Neil Lennon, by the way, on a Celtic thing.
Well, he was your former manager as well, and he had a miserable end at Easter Road as well. So
I'm joking. Under the Lennon at Hibs era, those games were brilliant, like total end-to-end football, as you say. Both teams really going at it, kind of gunslinging sort of games. Probably less so under kind of Heckingbottom and Jack Ross, albeit there was one quite good 2-2 game that I think you kind of ultimately end up stealing a point from that one. When you scored the kind of 2 late goals. I think that was last season, actually, behind closed doors. There have been good games more often than not. I can think back over the last decade or so, and they typically have been decent games of football. But I think we're likely to see maybe a slightly more cagey and a slightly more pragmatic Hibs than you've seen in the past. Probably not kind of going out all guns blazing and trying to get the first goal, because we've ultimately seen where that gets us.
Interesting. That's why we do these insight videos, to get insight like that, because I was expecting Hibs to absolutely come at us early on, and obviously you see them more often than me. You think it might be a little bit more disciplined. How do you think it's going to go?
So we recorded our preview podcast last night, and I said 3-1 Hibs, and I can't deviate from that, because that would be me saying something that I don't truly believe in. But no, I think it's going to be a really good game of football. I hope that we can just keep it tight early on, and not give away any easy early goals. And then I think we are showing, just over the last couple of games, like we're creating more chances. We just need to be clinical in the final third, and if we do that, I fancy us to score a few. So I'm going 3-1 Hibs.
Bullish as ever there from Liam with his prediction. A big thanks to him for giving up his time. Check him and his pals out on the Down the Slope Hibs podcast if you want to hear more. In terms of our recent record at Easter Road, we touched on it a little bit in that segment there, with regards to the overall record against Hibs and the fact it's not been a really happy hunting ground for Celtic lately. Our last 9 at Easter Road, and I realise that's a pretty weird number to choose, but there's a reason for that. That's the number of visits we've had to Leith since Hibs came back into the top flight in 2017. We've gone there 9 times, as I say. We've won just 2. There's been 5 draws, and Hibs have, of course, won 2. Now, one of those Celtic wins was in the Scottish Cup. The other was earlier this season. So that outlines just how tough a place it is to go and get 3 points. Team news wise, as Liam said, Ewan Henderson won't be around for the game tomorrow, as he is technically still a Celtic player, even though he's signing for Hibs permanently in the summer. Hibs are also in the midst of a bit of an injury crisis at the moment. They're likely to be missing 6 players through injury for the game tomorrow. Paul Hanlon, Kyle McGuinness, Joe Newell, Paul McGinn, Dimitri Mitchell and Harry Clark. Now, without knowing the Hibs best 11 off by heart, I would suggest there's at least 4 or 5 starters there, so that can only be good news from a Celtic point of view. Final bit of team news with regards to Hibs is that Ryan Porteous is likely to play, despite Police Scotland investigating allegations of an incident that happened outside a bar last weekend. Celtic-wise, Ange has given a little bit of an update on Kyogo. Nothing major, but he does say that Kyogo's return won't be far off. We're expecting David Turnbull back just prior to Kyogo. I would maybe suggest that we're not too far away from seeing clips of David Turnbull back in training at Lennoxtown. Maybe in the next couple of weeks we'll see that. Albion Ajeti and Mikey Johnson are both still out, but I doubt either would have started the game tomorrow. The good news from Thursday night, if there was any good news, is that a number of our key players didn't feature at all or only featured for a half. So they have basically had a week off to prepare for this game against Hibs and should be raring to go. I would expect Josip Juranovic, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Greg Taylor, Callum McGregor, Rayo Hatate, Liel Abada and Jota all to come back into the starting lineup. I think Sunday could be a game for Dyson Maeda up front. That's my selection up front. just given that these games tend to be quite frenetic, end to end, and it's a huge pitch at Easter Road. I'm not going to be unhappy if GG is up front, because obviously he played so well and scored a hat-trick in his last league match, so I could understand that, and it probably will be GG. But I just think with the pace, and given how successful pace was in the last game at Easter Road, you would want Dyson Maeda up front there. Just a couple of other bits and bobs to round up before I go and enjoy my Saturday. We did change it up a little bit on the channel yesterday. We had Celtic favourite from a few years ago, Peter Grant, on the channel. Check that video out. And while that was going on, we were finding out more about Celtic's upcoming Scottish Cup quarter-final against Dundee United at Tannadice. The match will take place on a Monday night, Monday the 14th of March at 7:45. It will be live on Premier Sports. Celtic fans will not be in the shed, the traditional end stand at Tannadice, as United are going to use that as extra home support. They're entitled to do that. It's a cup tie. If they feel it gives them a better chance of going through, which they obviously do, then that's fair enough, as frustrating as it is for Celtic fans and as much as it makes it a more difficult match for us. I think it has potential to be a really, really exciting game. Under the lights, cup tie, Tannadice, Dundee United v Celtic. We've seen fireworks in these matches in the cup previously, so I think it'll be good. Adult tickets will be priced at £27, but United are unhappy that Celtic wouldn't agree to any lower than that. Celtic wanted it priced at a regular league match price, £30. United wanted it far lower, obviously to encourage more fans into the shed, to make it an intimidating atmosphere. So £27 is what we're stuck at for adult prices. Finally, before I go, a very happy birthday to Fergus McCann, the saviour of Celtic. 81 years old today, so hope he has a wonderful day. I don't know if he watches the channel, but if he does, hail, hail Fergus, and thank you. We'll have the reaction for you tomorrow. It's going to be me and Stevie after the game. Hopefully when we're chatting, Celtic are 6 points clear at the top of the Premiership, but I think it's going to be really, really tough tomorrow. Win at all costs, Celtic. Tick it off.